We're now live.
Good evening. Apologies for our late start. This is the policy committee meeting for the Council Rock School District on February 23rd, scheduled to originally begin at 7 p.m. and now beginning at 7:45. We are a sub-quorum of the board this evening, with only 4 members present. We had prior to this meeting a presentation by a private company called Board Docs of some proprietary information they have that they wanted to show to the board, and the board will consider later at a public meeting. And so with having seen that, we will now be starting the public session. I'm Jerry Grupp. I'm the committee chair for the policy committee.
Mike Thorwart, school director.
Denise Brooks, school director.
Robert Frazier, superintendent.
Ed Tate, school director.
Harry Desko, director of K-12 education.
Sue Elliott, assistant superintendent.
Matt Frederickson, director of information technology.
Thank you. Mr. Desko, we're going to open with 123 this evening. Sounds like we're calling out a psalm number, but we're not.
So you can go.
And then you can walk through it. 123 is about the interscholastic athletics.
Correct. And for the most part, this is just a definition of what an interscholastic athletic program is and what the requirements for participation would be, as well as the type of interscholastic athletic program the school district will offer. There are a couple of things that I have that are questions, I guess, to the board about how to state this. In the under the authority, there's a lot of things here that are kind of redundant. It speaks to that the board adopts the standards set forth by the Constitution of the PIAA, which really governs much of what we do, and then a number of those things are also, several of those things are repeated independently, like the academic eligibility, which we follow the PIAA guidelines on. School attendance, they cite our school policy, which would be redundant because it says in our attendance policy requirements, speaks about the physicals and some of the requirements for students. And it also includes what we talked about previously about the explicitly stating that students be covered by student accident insurance, which we investigated, and our students are, if they don't have personal accident insurance, the school district has a policy that covers students. So that part, I don't know the level of comfort with either leaving it. I don't think there's a problem with leaving it as it is because we do follow all of those things. But again, most of those are listed individually under the PIAA.
This is one place where having a little redundancy to make it very clear to our extracurricular, having it right here, I mean, as long as there's no, nothing that conflicts between this and, I'm okay with it.
Everything that you read there, we follow. And certainly much more that's
Sure.
part of the PIAA.
At our most recent meeting, we had a discussion. We had a previous policy we just approved for homeschooled children. And I just want to make sure the references in this correlate to what we approved, or because there may be a timing issue. This may have come out before we finalized that.
Well, the issue really is some of these don't apply. In other words, when it says been in attendance on the school day,
That's why I
you know,
bring it
for
up.
the hours required, that is a parent who says that they were in attendance, you know, at their home, doing their home education. So again, we've not had issues with the participants that we've had in violation of this. Same thing would happen in terms of their academic eligibility, that a check would be made that the parent attests that the student is passing a set number of credits that courses that they're taking that would correspond to our credits. So I don't anticipate there's any issues, but the check and balance too is a little bit different because it's coming directly from the parent, not a,
But
you know, set.
Technically, they're following the same rules.
Correct.
I mean,
Yes.
they are in school,
That
it's
is
just a
correct.
different kind of school.
This is a new feature at the bottom of page 2 of 4, which is the second to last paragraph. The superintendent or designee shall annually prepare and approve and present to the board for its consideration of program interscholastic activities. We don't currently do that, do we?
Well, indirectly you do when you approve the
ERPP.
ERPP for each of those programs. Correct.
Yeah, except that this is calling that for that to be done annually, and that's done
annual. Well, it's called
It's not.
multiple times over. the course of the year,
Exactly,
yes.
because you're actually not, I'm not sure what we're approving when, we're
Right.
approving people, but not the activities.
The activities, just for your reference, the activities are listed on every one of those HR personnel agendas.
Each time we got an EDR,
Yeah,
you see one.
They're-
All of them
sometimes they're
listed.
blank
blank,
because
not
they haven't
yet
filled it,
filled.
but the activity, the interscholastic sport is still listed there. You'll see there that I did scratch, unless the board would like it, it
No,
says
schedule
we
events.
schedule events and
Thank you, no.
changes of events by the superintendent, we just don't do that. Another note that I put up, and I don't know if it does or doesn't matter, on the off-campus activities. Number 2, they kind of changed the language. Throughout they referenced interscholastic, but all of a sudden they changed it to extracurricular. And I'm not sure why, because there is a difference.
Well, and it's funny you say it because I was also wondering about co-curricular. We sometimes call these things different.
Right.
But now I ask a question, which is, this is interscholastic athletics. If we have a theater company, and our theater companies they go to Indiana for some thespian group. Do we have a policy that covers for off-campus activities, or that's just covered under our standard policy around off-campus activities? Or unique travel? We don't have a policy really around.
No, there's some that are very unique in that, like what you just described happens in the summer, outside the school
Oh, that's
year.
okay.
Yes. So,
That's even more problematic.
yeah.
I don't have a big problem with this. This is,
So I don't know if you want to change the extracurricular to interscholastic under number 2, because the language,
I'm comfortable with whatever makes you comfortable there.
yes,
The meaning is pretty obvious. It's just-
interscholastics are part of extracurricular, but not every extracurricular activity is interscholastic.
I would be
Athletics.
consistent.
Yeah, that's why I just thought we would change that to interscholastic.
You're obviously uncomfortable with the way.
Well, I don't want to cause confusion to
Yeah.
people about now why all of a sudden are we talking about a club that,
Yeah.
well, it is an interesting thing, which was, if you have students who are they are going as a team to do an event which is not an athletic event, are they bound by the same rules? Are they does the coach have them going as a unit to do something, Habitat for Humanity, or they're going to do some team building exercise? I don't know, I'm thinking, that they're traveling together and they are a team, but they're not going for they're not going for technically an interscholastic activity.
And I don't think they fall under this is specific to interscholastic athletics, which is why the PIAA is cited, which is why the physicals, et cetera. So I think that those each fall under a different.
Well, the definition is very clear, I think.
It is, it's just interscholastic athletics.
Yeah,
It's
so
not any other
changing,
level of competition.
you're just talking about changing extracurricular to
That's fine.
interscholastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Good. Yeah, and taking those other, you see that what's been lined through on those changes to the schedule and the reporting of the schedule. Other than that, what's on here is what we do.
Good. Good.
That's fine. Hearing everybody, I think we're gonna go for public read, final adoption at our next opportunity.
Yes.
Cool. That's one down, and Barry gets to scoot. Thank you, Mr. Deska.
Keep it. Lucky you.
Now, Dr. Elliott, you are leading the show.
Yes. So let's start with 116. We had the last meeting some discussion about this, and then we, I think partly in the essence of time, we kind of pushed it aside and wanted to kind of look at it a little bit more. So I want to first highlight some of the things we talked about. We didn't make those changes in the document. I took notes as we kind of talked through things. So one of the things that was suggested as a change to this is in the first sentence or the first statement with the purpose. Instead of where it says some students may, we also suggested either changing that may require to request or seek, but we didn't settle on wording for that. That was one. Another piece, wherever it says the superintendent, we noted we wanted to say or designee. So that will make that change too.
Well,
To-
who's
to
who's
this.
got a word that they like better than they require? Seek request, I mean.
I like
So they may not
You like
request,
what-
they may not request of us, they may seek it. So let's just say that
If
they.
you like seek that.
I think that's what,
Yeah.
to me, that's the intention, right?
See, I hate to be wordsmithing, but
Special.
well, this one strikes me as awkward in that the students wouldn't be seeking special help. Their parents are guardians.
Most typically, which then I would say that's probably why the word require is there. Because
Right,
that
so now that we
covers-
changed it to seek,
So we
it's
can-
sort of,
That's good, we can go back and require.
yeah, if we left it at
Okay.
require, we wouldn't have the problem, right? Good, better solution than playing around with.
Jerry, you okay with that?
We're taking seek back out.
Take out seek and it'll be may require, as it is currently worded.
You can actually say may require or request. You cover it both ways. Because a student may request it, student may, they may not request of us, they may go to their parent and say, I'm having trouble with this.
Sure. No problem with that.
May require or
Or
request.
Okay.
Whether it comes from a student or not, it may or may not, that's fine.
All right. Then the only other places where we really had conversation about there was some conversation around the tutors and how lists of tutors are kept, which really fits into the administrative reg that goes along with this, that really outlines how those lists are kept in the buildings and the guidance counselors.
Doesn't belong in
It
this
doesn't belong in
policy.
the policy. So, then the only changes we would add in excusal from school, the second paragraph, the tutor's qualifications must be approved by the superintendent or designee. And then, under private tutoring would be the fourth paragraph down where it says annually the parent guardian shall provide written assurance to the superintendent or designee.
You know, it is interesting,
Should I do it there too? So-
Yes, and there's a second
under private tutoring,
Part in that
it is an interesting
paragraph.
quandary, which says, the instructional program for students not enrolled in public schools due to private tutoring by a properly qualified shall comply with the state law. It is interesting when we just went through the whole home school thing, which is, they're specifying here a properly qualified private tutor. But we just went through the homeschool thing, there's not a requirement around qualifications for a private tutor. There are no qualifications.
In the context of homeschooling or?
Well-
In that context, yes.
In that context, so here, when a student is not enrolled in public schools due to private tutoring, is it really private tutoring or private instruction? I don't even know if it's tutoring at that point. What's the definition of
I
tutoring?
would call that instruction.
So
Tutoring
that's,
is,
tutoring seems to be supplemental.
exactly.
Correct.
So in the first line of private tutoring, is it due to private tutoring or private instruction? And then we don't look at the qualities. All we're saying is, truthfully, I'm thinking out loud as I read this, that the instructional program for students not enrolled in public schools due to private instruction shall comply
Yeah,
with state laws and
strike,
regulations.
yeah, and strike that, yeah.
So change this to instruction.
I should know this, but
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
I'm
think that
trying
makes
to
more sense.
harmonize it with the other one.
Let me just look at the law to see if there's anything in the law
Because
that,
we don't
Cite the law.
qualify. They cite 4 and 5, which is
Yeah.
we need a new website.
PA Code 241327.
so the first,
Yeah.
number 4, the first law that's cited is
Oh, yeah.
compulsory school attendance, and goes into detail about that. And the second one that is cited, I can go back to it.
See, because then they go in, the next talks about what is a properly qualified but it's not, you can run, you don't have to be a certified teacher to be teaching in a private school or to teach somebody at home
Or tutor.
or tutor. So I don't know, I'm confused now. This gets very confusing here with this whole private tutoring thing, because it seems to be at odds with the thing we just approved last time, which was to authorize homeschooling, and the homeschooling law doesn't have much in the way of requirements for the district to oversee or place burdens on those people.
Right. But both the two laws that it's referencing, one is compulsory attendance and the second one is excusal from public school attendance, specifically students not enrolled in public schools due to private tutoring. So in the law, it references tutoring, not home education, which I think is why then the language in that particular statement references everything is tutoring and not
Instruction.
right. And then in essence, what this policy is basically stating is that when a student is using a tutor to supplement beyond their regular classroom program, so they're still getting their regular classroom program with us, that we must make sure that the tutors meet certification.
Not to prolong this longer than it needs to be, what I would do is I think we all accept the initial changes you had made note of until I started screwing with the language now. I think it goes back to PSBA to say, can you justify how this harmonizes with the homeschooling law? Because I don't know that it doesn't, because they seem to be at odds at some level.
It's, you know, it's in a lot of it. I mean, when I think tutoring, I think extra help with math. And this talks about certifications and that.
So I don't know what we're getting.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is talking about, we are not verifying every private math tutor's certified.
Correct.
I mean, we're not. So-
Right, but we're keeping a list of possible tutors that parents could avail themselves of, and we're making sure that our list, everybody on our list is certified and meets the regulations, which is what our administrative regulation says.
But this is a burden. I'm trying to figure out who this burden is upon. The instructional program officer is not enrolled due to tutoring by a qualified tutor shall comply with state law. It's just.
I just think it's fascinating that the law, it uses that phrase.
It's archaic.
Yeah, I mean,
It is
it's,
archaic.
All right,
but
so
obviously we should be consistent because it's referencing that law.
yes,
Because then it drops down to annually, the parent guardian shall provide written assurance to the superintendent that all instructional requirements are being met, which seems to go right back to homeschooling. Because if I'm having a private tutor do it, what's the definition of homeschooling? Because is the private tutor, if the private tutor is going to the person's home to do the instruction, by
But the private
definition,
tutor
that's
could be the
homeschooling.
parent.
What?
The private tutor could be the
It
parent.
could be, or if it's being done at the home, it's by definition a homeschool. If it's not being done at home, then they're going to a private facility. So the two things they're walking through each other's backyard.
Do we need this policy?
Well, that is my question, but I didn't want to say it out loud. Do we need that section?
What, are we supposed to read your mind?
No, that was my, do we even need that section?
you mean the private tutoring
Yes.
section? It links specifically to the law, and the law
Yeah, but
further articulates private tutoring and what it is and what's required, what courses the instruction must include.
We by default follow the law, so do we need to say we're following the law?
This actually is not a burden on us, this is a burden on each private tutor shall file with the superintendent a copy of his or her stated training. No person shall be disqualified from school employment by the provision. So immediately, this seems overreaching because each private tutor, so the high school kid who's tutoring somebody is a private tutor. I don't see a definition, and by definition, then they have to file a copy of their Pennsylvania certification, which they would not have.
But I think
But I
this
think
only
this word
applies to
private.
the list that we maintain.
Yes,
Parents
that's
ask
correct.
us for a list of tutors.
And
This
also,
doesn't apply to anyone else out there providing tutoring services It's not on our list. This just applies to the list that we maintain.
Right, and it's also, you can't talk about this like the NHS kids, because that, I don't know that that would be a private tutor. Those kids are like tutoring in the library or in the classrooms. I mean, I'm just
No,
saying that
I
it's,
gotcha.
the word private, I think,
But one said properly qualified private tutor, and then it goes down to each private tutor. So are they the same term? If I was running a contract, I would have put a paren private tutor in bold, and that would be a term I'd use thereafter, referencing back to the definition. But
So-
it's not.
So why don't, we'll connect with PSBA on this and connect it to the law.
If they make a case that we need it, then I'm fine. You know, I'm okay
That
with
we
that.
can pare it down to just the essential part, because it's not, I'm not getting that thing that this relates to our list of private tutors, you know, and then,
Well, I think that speaks to the guidelines section in cases where it says about the district
In there, I agree with you.
will have it right. So I think that's the way we keep the list references the part with the guidelines.
yeah, see, I take exception that the building principal designate may recommend that the parents or guardians secure tutorial services for the student from a list of available tutors maintained by the school. That we are steering people to a specific tutor.
Well, we're recommending, we're saying
I
here,
understand.
here are people that you can,
I understand.
that you can access if you want, but it's not a you must, it's a they can recommend.
right, and it's just that the district is saying this list has been vetted by us.
Yes.
Yeah, I worry about our liability.
It's a nice-
I recommend.
Yeah, I think it's a nice resource to have. In practice though, how many parents go that route as opposed to find their own?
I think you get a mix.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question.
No, but my suspicion.
My experience is many parents will go to a teacher they trust,
Yes.
whether the one they're having difficulty with or one in a district, something that they trust. They may go to the math teacher because they're wrong with physics and say, who's good? And the math teacher tells them.
Oh, I've got a lot of experience, unfortunately.
I think we'll see this again.
Okay, so
Doesn't make
let's,
sense. Let's not
we'll reach out to
belabor
PSBA
it.
and get some clarification on that. Right. So we'll move on to 119.
Ooh, it's on one page.
Okay.
Current events.
Current events. So this particular policy, I agree with what has been recommended, and I have no particular edits for this policy.
I'm good.
Yeah, I like that delegation of responsibility wording. Do not stifle the spirit of free and scholarly inquiry.
Is it required? Not the wording, is the whole, is there an issue about that?
About,
That people would not be using current events in school, which would be hard for me to imagine, or what do you think this does for us? That's what I'm trying to understand. What would a violation, right now, if we didn't have this policy, how would someone do something which was against the policy? I guess,
Only
answer my
present one
question.
side. It's, I mean, this is talking about,
I was trying to play devil's advocate, trying to figure it out. So that's-
I would say, and maybe this isn't in this policy also, there are places to discuss current events and there are places to not discuss current events.
You know,
Math class is not a good place for politics. So,
unless you're trying to figure out how the electoral college works.
yeah, okay.
No, but you know what? I'll give you this. You're right. It's good as it is. I'll tell you why. The other, which makes me think of it, which is in the current political climate, the world is so divisive right now that everybody claims, but you're only presenting one side, or that it's this bias within these people or that people. So at least we have something to point to say that we try to eliminate that bias.
and I think too, under the authority section, the second part of that first statement, provided they're used in the instructional program,
Right.
speaks specifically to your point.
Yes.
So,
So we'll go for adoption of the next read.
Pretty clear.
Everybody agrees? And you're up with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're down with that, whatever the current phrase.
I think having this protects us.
That's what I'm
Yes.
getting to. That's, I would eliminate it, except at a different day and time, I would eliminate it, but not this day, not this time.
All right, next one on the list is 124, which is alternative instruction.
Which was previously called summer school.
So, in this particular note, I have a note from our last time that was from Dr. Foster about a recommended insert into the policy. Just want to look at, make sure that I have it correct. To go after in the delegation of responsibility section where it says the building principal shall determine the number of credits. After that, the principal shall provide the central office administrator for curriculum an opportunity to review the decision on the alternative instruction course and assign credits. The suggestion was to add this to the policy to know that it would not solely rest on the responsibility of the building principal when looking at making some of those decisions. And I think that's a reasonable addition.
Let me
So let me-
ask you,
should I read that again?
Do you have the bandwidth to handle that? I mean, it's gonna have to be timely,
Yes,
so that's,
absolutely, right.
Well, with two high schools and also,
yeah.
also makes for balance.
It ensures consistency.
That's fine.
Do we
On something
need,
that's-
Yes, it does ensure consistency when you have things happening in both high schools where you want to make sure if it's been granted in one school or denied in one school or suggested revisions that you're doing the same.
I'm guessing that a good bulk of the instruction that is done, like I know it's very common for students to take like phys ed in the summer, so that they can
Yes.
free up their schedule for another class.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if it needs to be a discussion about limiting the number of courses that can be taken outside of the school.
Start putting hard and fast rules in.
Right, and I don't know that that's the policy isn't the place for that.
I mean, I don't know that it's an issue now, but my concern is that I've read things online about school districts where this sort of like runs amok. And, it's like sort of gaming how the high school transcript gets filled and kids take courses outside of, to accelerate so that they get college classes before they actually get their high school diploma. And I mean, this is just something, I don't think it's an issue now. I don't hear a lot about that. Again, like the bulk of what I hear is trying to get out of gym. Or it's not like taking chemistry in the summer. But if that became an issue, I would definitely want to come back and look at this because I have seen other school districts who've applied limits to prevent that kind of stress. Because it's, once kids start doing it, oh, I should be doing it too. And I just think it creates this, this mindset that is way too competitive and we shouldn't be encouraging that or helping make that happen if it's, I could just see how this could get out of hand, so.
And I agree with what you're saying. I think that's something that rather than being in the policy itself, would be something that would go in more of an administrative regulation that kind of
I think
provides.
that may look to, if we have a policy around how we accumulate and count credits, that might be there, that would make sense. Because that would be, rather than looking here to it, I think that's where someone might look to say, well, if I want to take these, will they count? And they would go look at the credit section to see how we accumulate your 2 history or 4 English or whatever it is.
I mean, there's something in the program planning book that talks about that, but I haven't looked at that.
And that's where I've typically seen it.
Yes.
Because the points that you're making are very valid. And I work for a system where it was capped because of inequities that were created between the haves and have-nots, because you had some students who were able to quote unquote bot their GPA by going out and participating in a plethora of these kinds of experiences, and other students who couldn't do any of that. So where's that happy medium? Where's that line misdrawn? And so that district attempted to find that line. And I think that so fairly successfully. But those limits didn't find their way into the policy, they found their way into the course guide.
My concerns around this are more elemental. The existing policy spoke of summer school and was intended to give a framework around school that we would offer in the summer, which often would really, more characteristically here, seem to be more on the ESY, extended school year spectrum. It doesn't speak about high school. It speaks about students needing remedial programs. That was what was there. The only tie I have of that one to the new one is a word which I think is mistakenly included in the new policy, which is the words summer school. Because you could take the course if you wanted to, and if the school district agreed, you could take, say, the EMT course that meets Friday night and Saturdays for, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and you get college credit. And maybe you would say to someone, hey, look, it's the school year. I don't want to take, I want to take that course to count towards my credit. Will it count? And they'll go to you and they'll ask, and you would say, well, we'll evaluate. Yes. So it doesn't have to be summer school. So I think that in the new one, if we'll come back later and figure out what we have to do around the criteria of what the old one was, and that was kind of an ESY thing, and we say, okay, we'll look at the new 124. I just wonder about, do we need the word summer? Is it really, summer school correspondence courses, distance, online courses, dual enrollment? I just don't think the word summer is appropriate there, because
No, I can see places where.
everything else is in summer.
Yeah, but if you need that remediation and we don't offer it, could you go to, say, Pennsbury, enroll and get the summer school?
Well, I'm not saying it has to, I'm just saying it could be any course. It could be, I'm just saying summer school seems limiting when you read it. Because it
So
could
if you
be
just say through approved school,
approved courses, either correspondence, distance education, through approved courses. It could be an approved course of any nature. It doesn't have to say whether you're in person or.
You're just reading that a lot more literally than I am, because I feel like the language is just giving a variety of different ways that
Just
you
examples,
could, I'm not reading it the same way.
Well, it doesn't give, that one doesn't give the option of attending. As it's written there, it doesn't give the option of attending school, attending a course. Unless it's no, distance learning. So if you went to a course.
But it's
we can set
work
it up.
successfully completed. I mean, it's vague. It doesn't,
Nothing's excluded, and I think the value
Change
of
it.
having summer school in there is because parents might be looking for the policy that speaks to summer school. I mean, we're eliminating policy on summer school, and we're.
We'll have to come back to that one. I'm not gonna live and die on it, as long as you think, in practice, we're gonna say if they take a course, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a correspondence course. It's funny that if you take out summer school, none of the other courses listed are described as a place that you would go in person.
A dual enrollment course.
Dual enrollment would,
But that's by agreement, we would have to have a dual enrollment agreement, we don't. You understand the point?
Yeah,
I'm not gonna live and die by it. In general, it seems to be fine. But I do wanna make sure we come back and visit what we now, do we need something then to replace the current policy 124? Or should this not be 124, and should 124 remain as it was, and this should have a different number? Was there purpose in the existing 124 that isn't served elsewhere in our policy manual?
it's a summer program of remedial and enrichment instruction.
But it's not for high school students. It doesn't, it's not limited to high school students.
No. So was
It
this,
also talks about that we're offering it, and also says it's a will.
yeah, this is speaking of
ESY.
program offerings we used to.
No, we still
provide?
do.
We still have that, right?
Well, then, does that need to be covered by policy elsewhere?
That's my question.
That's Jerry's question.
That's my question. Does this stay 124 and the other one becomes 12X? I don't know what.
so the guidance and the comments from PSBA relative to the change of this from what looks like a traditional summer school remediation to what it is now, is that the language was replaced to be more in line with current law. And that the language includes, it's relevant to other types of alternative instruction, and not just summer school.
Right. Actually, after 4, I hear what you said, I'm not disregarding it. After 4 was actually that we had the ability as well to charge. It's actually incorrect because it says charge to all students. It wasn't necessarily charged to all students because some students, it was provided as a requirement of their, I guess.
We're talking about the old policy.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
was looking on the new
Sorry.
policy and trying to figure out where.
No, I'm looking at the paragraph after 4, it says tuition will be charged to all students who participate and shall be set by the board. And actually.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Do we provide ESY programming
If it's
that charges a tuition of our students?
if it's ESY and required by under an IEP, it's covered by us.
Right, of
If
course.
it's a program that someone took for an enrichment sort of program, historically, we did
Right.
charge, and we had some courses we offered that way.
Right, like the STEM programming that we offer in the summertime.
Yeah, does that need to be
Music.
authorized by policy is my question.
Right.
But I think,
I think we're fine without a policy,
Alright,
still
good.
operating those,
All right,
those programs personally.
okay.
You're talking about the summer?
The summer programs.
Yeah, and I think too, this policy in particular speaks to, credit toward high school graduation.
The new one.
Yes, the new one.
Exactly.
So what we provide for summer school, based on my current understanding of enrichment is not anything geared toward credit toward high school graduation.
It's more
programs to enrich students.
Right.
We give them,
study skills,
yes.
music, instruction.
There's
And we can
STEM
do
things,
that,
some-
and we can charge tuition without a policy authorizing us to do
So
that.
here's where I am. So we'll take the new 124. We'll think that right now that 124 will come out because it's a resource in our district. Someone check with Chuck to see if there's anything that he knows that he needs this for an ESY appropriately.
Can always put a 124.1 in.
Exactly.
Well,
If
is
Chuck,
there-
if Chuck came back and said that there's some requirement around it, or, he may know what sections this is, I don't know the sections of the law. And if he doesn't come back and say he wants it, we'll never see it again.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
Matt, you'll.
I trust him, that's his area. So the new one.
So are we okay with the new, moving forward with the new 124?
Yes, for adoption?
Yeah.
Ed agrees?
Yes,
Cool. This is a board policy we don't need. Okay. We haven't done this in a long time.
All right, 125 is adult education. And I have no suggested edits to what we have here.
I have one, can we get rid of it?
You can choose to get rid of it.
It's a May, the whole thing is a May.
Do we need this? And we don't
do
do it
anything?
now. We don't do any of
I
that
mean,
now.
I remember conversations over time, like, oh, maybe we should do that. But, this isn't like
It's guidelines.
the Raising Great Kids series or anything Crunchy would offer or anything like that.
Central Bucks offers an adult education program. They actually have someone on staff that manages it part-time, and they make money at it. When I first got here 13 years ago, Larry Clean had just finished doing a report for Dr. Carr. And we've got the community college right across the street.
Right,
There
the
was just-
townships do so many programs.
It made no sense for us to even try to invest in it. There was no way we're gonna make money. to cover
I
our
don't think we
costs.
need it.
Why don't we look? Yeah, I came from, in New Jersey, I was part of a township. And the programs they had them there. They had a choir group that met there as a class. They had auto mechanics and they had some woodworking for people who wanted to learn a new hobby because they had all the equipment. And that was why they offered it. It was an opportunity to have adults learn to do it where you wouldn't otherwise, you don't go out and buy, a $700 lathe to find out you don't do it well.
Right, but like the township
Oh, we don't-
offers courses in Excel and PowerPoint and, public speaking, this just seems like,
My inclination is to toss it.
Yeah,
I don't,
for now, we'll
if
get
it makes
rid
you
of
more
because it doesn't-
comfortable to keep it, I'm fine.
It doesn't, it's.
I don't
everything
care.
in
I
it
just
is
think
May.
it's a silly policy.
I'm fine with tossing it. I think everything about it says May. If
Okay.
there's nothing.
So Matt, what we'll need, or whoever's doing that, Sue, at the next time, we'll need a second motion to retire the board policy 125, adult education, as being antiquated.
Right, and I think this becomes a function of, you know, the original policy in 1998, in 20 years, look at, I mean, there's so many different resources available, it just,
Part of it is we're a regional school district, we're not a single community.
right,
When you're a single community school district, your integration with your public offerings are much different. Your township offering, your school
Right.
offerings are much more coordinated. So we're gonna retire that next time. No disagreement?
no,
We'll 127 assessment system.
127.
Nice job, Mike.
Assessment system. I also do not have any recommendations for any changes to this policy. There was a recommendation by Dr. Foster to include a paragraph after the first paragraph of authority that spoke to, let me just reference my notes, spoke to the access of assessment data by the community in some way to be able to compare performance of our schools with other schools and across, not just within our district, but across. And we can't insert that because we don't have the ability to do that. We're limited in the data that we have access to be able to do anything like that.
so it may come up in a conversation, but to put it in the policy,
Correct.
just,
Yes.
I mean, this
we
is
aren't-
all just guided by,
It's state law.
it's all laws, right?
Yes,
So I
it is,
mean,
correct. Yes, so,
So the reason we're including it is really as notice to future boards, because it's all state law.
mhm.
So if we didn't have it, the only error would be that the board might not remember to do it. Not that we would here either.
Well, and I think it's also for parents who may have issues, you know, if students aren't performing, whatever, I mean, it is a resource to understand what the
You're
district provides in those
It's
circumstances.
informative, I mean, it's basically
Right.
all it is.
But I mean, I think there's nothing,
Yeah, there's nothing controversial in it either. so.
In the second, in delegation of authority, Robert, it says that superintendent or designee shall provide summary information to the public regarding the student achievement. Is there a format that we have to do that in?
Do it every time an academic standards and
I mean, every year we review.
Yeah, that's how it's done.
It's done.
It's through public meeting, academic
That's
standards
fine.
committee.
I wonder if there was some standard form, kind of listening, you know.
In fact, the standard forms are provided by the state,
Right,
you know, via website.
Right, well,
That's
so
a
when-
local school district.
so I agree that we can't compel other districts to do it, but that's
Right.
probably what Dr. Foster was referring to, is that if everybody reports in standard form, you have the ability to compare it across the standard form.
Right.
I'm not putting words in his mouth, but that's how I think you achieve what he was looking for.
Right? So, and in this policy, we already, where it says superintendent, it's superintendent or designee is already there. So, are we okay to move forward with
I just
this?
want to make sure, on the second page, second paragraph, shall provide assistance to students not attaining academic standards at the proficient level. I want to make sure that some of this isn't a holdover from what was the Keystones and all that. Remember, there was remediation, so I want to make sure this is not enduring from what I think was defunct practice. That the Keystones don't still have that,
Well, we're still giving the Keystones.
Yes, we are.
but there was the remediation component of it.
Well, and
That-
technically,
that's
that's,
all.
it's only on hold.
Right.
It's not.
And they're still testing
Been changed.
for.
Right, so my question really, because it's on hold, that becomes, so my question is, this is saying that we're doing this, I'm not saying we're not, but it's saying we shall, I'm sorry, the district shall provide assistance and to students not achieving, and that requirement under state law is currently on hold. So I'm trying to figure out, is this reflective of if that comes off hold, if that goes away, are we still in the same part here? So is that reference to 3 and 5, referencing a portion that is the part that's in question at the state level?
No.
Yes,
So
no, it doesn't.
The only piece that's on hold is the graduation requirement.
Correct.
I thought there was a whole remediation thing that we had to go and,
Well, that's, it's a mandatory remediation piece and then a mandatory project-based assessment
Yeah.
Right,
piece that followed the remediation after 2 unsuccessful attempts. So those are the pieces that are on hold. But this applies also to the PSSAs in elementary school and middle
Yes.
school, which of course have nothing to do with graduation. So if we have a student who is non-proficient, who's scoring at the below basic or the basic level, then certainly we want to help those students because they're not achieving at the proficient level. So we're going to offer assistance and make sure their parents are offered assistance. So I still think there's value in both of those sentences, regardless of whether the Keystones stay or don't stay as a graduation requirement.
that's fine.
And it speaks not just to the state assessments, that this references the district's assessment system. And the law says local assessment system and indicates in that the school, kind of the same language that's in the section you're discussing, the school shall provide assistance to students not attaining academic standards at the proficient level or better, but doesn't specify on the state assessments, because then further in the law, it lists, local assessments in the variety that they could be.
That's fine. The only other question I had, and I'm sorry, the last paragraph, students with disabilities. And while and it says for students with disability in ESL, shall participate in assessments with appropriate accommodations when necessary. I'm all for that, except we run into this problem with one of these assessments at a state level, where the only exception you can take for this thing is a religious exemption. And so you have children who would have a medical exemption, which is not acknowledged by the state law, such as a child with an anxiety disorder, for whom these tests create a medical problem. And this doesn't accommodate that. So.
But it does accommodate state law, which we have to follow.
Exactly, and for that reason, and when we go to vote on this, I'll vote no on this one, because I don't believe it provides appropriate safeguards for children with disabilities. I applaud it for requiring appropriate accommodations, but one of those accommodations is for children where it becomes creates a medically fragile situation for a child. It doesn't allow the child to be excluded. And then I will be very blunt, and we just pulled our kid out of them. And that avoided these.
You're right.
So I think
This
that's,
is for approval.
it is for approval. I won't be approving it, but it is for approval.
So 130 is our next one,
Opinion?
and that is homework. Sorry, I was getting
No, that's
myself.
fine.
I think these changes are in here, that's what I'm.
I'm cringing by number 5.
Okay,
Seriously?
In the first
Like,
paragraph,
is that real?
Encourage
That was
parent interaction.
The purpose of homework is to encourage parent,
Oh,
guardian,
all right.
and child interaction.
Purpose is a different thing.
Really?
My response was, I've already been to fill in the blank.
Here,
Great.
kid, give me that pencil.
I'd like to see that struck. No, that is not the purpose of homework.
Why-
I read it a little different.
by the way,
Tutoring in chemistry tonight, so.
That may happen, but it says the purpose of homework assignment should be to.
Your point is valid. Your point is valid.
Sorry, I've been waiting weeks to talk about that. Since this came, when I read that, I was like, are you serious?
well, I think too, when you look at number 5, speaking from an elementary perspective, yes, number 5 makes perfect sense, that some of the homework that students are getting, for example, reading, they have to read aloud to someone at the primary grades. That encourages parent and child interaction because of the importance of being able to read and talk about your reading.
Okay.
That's just an example.
I know the
I
essence, but
understand your
I'm
point.
just reading it as the purpose of homework should be to encourage parent,
Okay.
guardian, and child interaction, and that just
So-
sounds so odd to me.
I think that
it happens
it's-
in practice, but
Certainly not the purpose, so I think that striking that's
If you,
okay.
if you strike it, I'm not gonna stand
The
the
one-
one.
We can strike it.
The one thing that I am disappointed at, and it's not at anybody in this room, it's more that people who work on this day in, day out at PSBA don't have a sense of this, which is, this doesn't speak at all to the coordination, it's difficult, the coordination of demands for homework across a spectrum of courses. That there is lack of, we talk about PLCs. Jeez, you gotta remember that. We talk about PLCs where everybody's gonna coordinate, right? And this course and that course are gonna cooperate, and they're gonna take best practices, and it'll be, continuum of education across things. And teachers often assign homework like they're the only course this kid's got. And there's this policy, which first of all, as a policy, I ain't got a clue as to why it's a policy, because it doesn't create any, maybe it does, but limits. The only thing here, which I think is wonderful, is homework shall not be assigned as a form of punishment. I think that's absolutely true. It should not be. In practice, not so much. But it doesn't speak at all to the need to coordinate. It also doesn't speak at all, and I don't know how you do this. Wasn't there a rubric at one time that said homework, 10 minutes a grade?
That's in our administrative
I was just
regulations.
gonna ask you, do these things belong in the administrative?
Yes, so in the administrative regulations, it says at the elementary level, homework will follow this formula, grade level times 10 minutes. And then at the secondary level, the length of assignments will vary according to the level of the course.
Agreed.
And at both levels, assignments can vary in form or length, extending over weekends and/or long breaks. And then gives some specific points for what teachers will do. Meet the needs of students, support and enrich, kind of lists what expectations are for homework, et cetera. And then it just says a student can be expected to have homework assigned regularly. At all levels, students are expected to complete homework in a specified time period and in a manner that represents the student's best effort. That's our administrative regulation.
And, okay, and one of the things, I don't know if it's a counterpoint or a compliment to the notion that was supposed to be here in 5, okay, initially here in 5, was, and it's not reflected apparently in the administrative regs, which amazes me, is sometimes the notion is you have a break, you have a long break, Easter break, Christmas break, whatever we call those, politically correct breaks. So I gave you a big assignment for that one, which seems totally counter to the notion of spend time with your family and be
well, I
away.
think that the high schools have worked towards, if there are assignments that would be due like after a break, that they be assigned, not like immediately
Well in
proceeding, so that if people
advance.
were going away. I do hear little pockets of things where that doesn't fully happen, but compared to how it was, Jerry, when our kids were in school, it's way better.
Well,
definitely.
I know better when mine were there, so I'll have to look the mic for how it's.
I have
But you got kids.
kids that are very.
I sat with your daughter, well, she wants to do the homework, so
I'm not a good example.
No.
So,
But I don't object to these things, it's just that, can we beef up the ad regs? Maybe we need to look at those, not we need to,
I would like
but
to
we
look
need
at
to
that.
provide you.
Well, they
Our
talk
thought,
about there's a section for parent considerations, for student considerations, and for what teachers will do. It says in the teachers, the last point, be respectful of assigning work during religious holidays or other family circumstances.
my experience has been, it's done well. Along those lines, I mean,
Then it has changed.
So I think the
It definitely
regulations
has,
speak to
but-
some of the things you're referencing.
But I mean, Jerry, you raise a good point, and it's a challenge in the high school just because of the nature of how kids get scheduled. But there are certain kids that have exceptional amounts of homework. And, in the elementary school and in the middle school, because of the teams, there's a better, a teacher in elementary school obviously knows what they're assigning, but the teams help that dialogue. But in the high school,
Middle school, so,
it's very hard, and
it's also course selection.
yeah. It is, if you take 6 AP courses, you
You are going to be working.
Yeah, exactly.
It's,
so, I mean, it is a challenge.
That's why, that's why in colleges, we limit credits a student takes.
in the semester.
So there was one other, so we're gonna strike number 5
Thank
from
you.
this. There was one other suggested edit from Dr. Foster in the guidelines. And I looked at his suggestion and made some tweaks to how the paragraph is worded. It's the 4th paragraph in guidelines right before the line of homework shall not be a form of punishment. So the suggested revision, required reference materials for the completion of student assignments are accessible within the libraries, reference centers, and databases provided by the district. We're going to cross out the next sentence, the use of other sources, blah, 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 and to however, and then start a new sentence. The use of libraries and other sources outside of the district shall not be required for earning course credits, nor shall the use of outside sources be a factor in determining grades. So just kind of shortened up the language a little bit.
I like
Pretty
that
much
change.
say the exact same thing, but say it a little bit more succinctly.
I like that change.
The use of,
No,
up to however, just up to however,
The use of libraries.
and
Take out
include however.
the word however, and start the next sentence
Oh,
with
sorry,
the.
I'm not being very clear.
Capitalized. There was, I had a fleeting thought here. Well, totally escaped me.
And then it's all fine.
The requirement for, I want to make sure we're not requiring children to use equipment that they may not own. This is less of a problem now than it was. One time, we had assignments where you had to do something on a computer, but kids didn't have a computer. I think that's probably de minimis, that's probably not in practice now.
In my experience.
No, I think kids have gotten past that.
You do require calculators.
For some courses.
Yeah, now it totally escapes me what my other goal was going to be. Oh, well, if it was good, it will come back.
I'm good.
You
That's a
good
good change.
with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I like that omission makes it better.
Okay.
So this will be up for approval.
And 138,
Oh, I did have one, I'm sorry, let's stay on that for 1 second, 130. There's a phrasing in here, the phrasing in 4 prevents a new concept. Provide practice and reinforcements of skills presented by the teacher. We've talked about and seen literature about flipping the classroom, which would be the other way around, which would be just for those people playing along at home. Flipping the classroom means that the kids read the part that would normally be lecture and then work on their, what would have been homework in the classroom, so that right now the situation is one is you are lectured, potentially lectured. You are told about something in school and you go home and in math maybe, then you try and work it through on your home and you don't know how to do it. You go to see mom and mom gets mad at you, and that's why we wiped out 5. So that, it's difficult. The thought here is that you go home and you read about how to do the things, or learn or watch a video at home of how to do the things, and then you come to school and you do the homework there, because when you have problems with it, it's not mom or dad, it's the instructor who's coaching you through these things. So I want to make sure that this policy, because I'm reading number 4 in that policy, doesn't restrict us from using that.
It
new
doesn't.
notion.
Actually, most of the people that do flip the classroom also include at the end of the at-home lesson, skills for the students to practice so that they get started before they come to class the
I
next
see
day.
reinforcement. I'm
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we
I think
weren't,
it's sufficiently.
that's fine. I just wanted to give it air so we would have a thought around it. Fine,
You
let's
know
go with it.
what, and if we start flipping classrooms and it becomes a problem, we can.
Is there any prospect for doing that? Have we tried that or piloted that? Have you seen
Flipping
that?
the classroom?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been used throughout the district.
how's that going?
The people who are doing it very well. It's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
It happens mostly, the ones that I've seen has been mostly at the middle school.
Althea does it, doesn't she?
She does a little bit. There are some at the high schools too, but it was more prevalent a couple years ago at the middle schools. I don't know lately if I know anybody who's been doing it.
I think this is not an academic standards committee, but I think that's a novel enough thing that I would really love to see some of the high school audio, video classes to capture how that works. So we can do a little, I don't want, you can't have someone come in and demonstrate that to the board or demonstrate it to them. But I'd love to see how that works, in a 5-minute segment that we can see, we can play it at a board meeting or we can put it on our channel. I think it's interesting. I think
Come in and
it's,
do that?
I think that
To
would be
demonstrate a flipped classroom?
just so people would know what it is, so they'd see what it is. I think it's exciting. I think it's innovative. If they're awake, how do you draw the community in to see what's new and innovative? People don't know.
Next.
Sorry. ELE, whatever it is called today.
English as a second language bilingual education program, number 138. Again, this one links specifically to the law, so I do not have any suggestions for any edits to this policy.
As evidenced by an entire page of
Yeah.
references.
Yes, yes.
I have to defer to you. As obviously this is not my specialty either, so if you're comfortable, if the administration is comfortable,
Mhm.
I can't add anything to this one.
Yes, it speaks to, what we need to do as far as
Yeah.
that type of a program. Now, we do not have a bilingual education program, but in the law, most everything refers to them both in the same
Right.
sentence, so.
I guess it's covered here when it says shall be in the mode and language of communication preferred by the parents or guardians. I guess that's covered. I'm just always concerned that we're making the communications to adults.
Where are you?
I'm looking at, no, it's there. I guess it's covered under the second page, under family engagement
Okay.
communications.
Mhm.
That's my largest concern around this. I know that at one of the schools, there was a large Russian population. It's Rolling Hills, has historically one of the larger foreign-speaking populations. And oftentimes the kid is the translator. We have to avoid that.
Well, we can provide, so we have resources that, we can access to provide documents translated, as well as links to places to find if we need an interpreter.
Do we
So we do have adults that serve as interpreters and.
And do we have any, and I'm not asking for names, do we keep a registry in the district of native-speaking employees of the district? For native speakers of other languages in the district of employees or teachers, do we have that as a resource?
Not that I'm
Yeah, not that I
aware of.
know of, not.
The only reason I mention it is that, the
Good
world
idea.
changes. I would think at all levels, and that we have that list, because one of the things that happens too, and we all know this, is things happen and teachers and people go to the house when there's something going on for that family. And if the teachers don't speak that language, I don't care who they take with them, if it's any native speaker, it doesn't have to be an official translator, but how do you support that family who needs it? And we've all had that, we have that all the time.
Yep.
So if we could, it's for your consideration, just to compile that list, maybe Christine can keep it, just so we have it as a resource. When something happens, we're in a spot where we can make that communications.
Well, let me check into that a little bit more to see if there isn't something that we do have that we just.
It's not required by this,
Correct.
but it's more, truthfully, should be a part of our emergency response plan to know where those language skills are.
I'm just remembering, I don't even remember what school. I mean, it's probably not in a formal way, but there were situations where, peers of one of my kids were in a school, they were new, they didn't speak English, and there were teachers in the building that helped
Rolling
navigate
Hills had
that.
one elementary teacher I remember at one time who was Russian speaking from her
No,
family.
yeah, but I'm actually remembering something at Holland Middle. But anyway, I mean, yes, that was the case in Rolling Hills too, so I don't know, that it's formally
Yeah, it's not a thing that we
Correct,
have to do.
But
it's-
let me just, I'll look into it a little bit more because it might be something that there is some record that I don't know
Right.
about.
Yeah, I don't want to, I hope never to use the list, but.
So are we good to move this one?
Yes.
forward? All right, that leaves us with number 142, which is migrant students. And there was one suggested change here, and that was just to align with some of the current terminology that the policy had the word vocational education, which doesn't align with our other policy on career and technical education, which we changed that language from vocational to career and technical. So just made that switch in this policy in number 3 of the guidelines from where it says vocational to career and technical education. Otherwise,
I mean, it's interesting that the
No.
definition is not supplied
In the new one.
in the new. Is that,
It's a heck of a lot of state law, man, so.
so is that just covered in
That's
how the
another one.
district identifies or something? Like,
well, let me look at the,
Well, my question is, do we need this? If we're just regurgitating state law.
Actually, I'm not saying it's it's school code and code of federal regulations and
Yeah.
United States Code, 20 USC and 34 CFR.
I
Yeah, so it's federal too. It's interesting to me though, because what I look at when I look at this is we are required by law. I think we're required by law to have a policy. That's my suspicion on this.
That could be.
I'm thinking because we're also required by law to have a policy, I believe, on homeless students. There's actually an act, I can't remember the name of the act, but, and I find it odd.
the McKinney-Vento Act is for homeless students.
There you go.
Yes.
I would think that we would consider, not that there's anything wrong, I would prefer to consider the two together, looking for
right,
commonalities.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure that they're harmonized between the two.
Well, there's a U.S. code for education of migratory children, which is referenced in the authority section of this
Do we have
policy.
migrant students in our district now?
I don't know at the moment. I know we have, but I don't know, I can't really speak to that.
I mean, I don't know if it's relevant or not. I mean, to me, when I looked at the two, the definition is missing, and I don't know, is it just simply covered?
Let's push
through-
it back for the time being, to find out why the definition isn't there.
Okay.
Because I think you're right. I think it makes sense to have the definition.
And let's consider it with the homeless one too.
That's what I'm
makes
thinking, if we
very-
That's a good
just
point.
Pair them up.
Bring the two together. Because I'm also interested, and while I'm not really in favor of some of the policies of the current administration, I'm not you, you're fine. The other administration.
Yeah.
I also want to understand what it means. I have concerns around what it will mean, or what the obligation will be of the district for students who are not here legally, but we have an obligation to educate them. So I would like to see the policies around any of those that apply together kind of considered together. I don't want to
Yeah,
be in a
that's a good
situation
idea.
where
Makes sense.
I am concerned and reluctant that the school district, I mean, just a moment of commentary. I understand the whole thing about sanctuary cities, but I also understand that once people start enabling parts of the government that are not ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, you endanger the community, because now persons who are in those communities who may have sexual violence against them or be victims of other crime can't come forward, because now when they come forward to report, now they, even though the victim, are subject to inclusion in these sweeps. So I see the deputization, if you will, of those lower level local officers, and maybe the school district in some capacity. I don't want to get caught up in that, so I want to know what the laws are at this point, because I don't want to be caught up in denying somebody from doing the right thing, endangering their life when they want to do the right thing because they don't want to be deported. So that's just me.
So we're going to table migrant student policy 142. I'm going to check with PSBA and see if it can be combined with the homeless policy, and if we have a policy concerning illegal immigrants,
Undocumented,
undocumented,
the word illegal is, yeah, it's,
undocumented.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to combine it, but I want to know if we do have a policy around homeless students. I want to
We want
consider
to
the two
consider all
together.
together.
I think
one
it's
way or
good
another.
in one session.
Just
Well,
take
and
one
we'll have to
policy.
look at this, because I know that the McKinney-Vento Act, the laws around that are very specific to the definition of those students,
Right.
and migrant students
We
aren't.
could have three different
Yes.
policies, let's just
Right,
consider
but
them
I,
the same meeting.
some,
The-
there
the
could be
nature-
overlap of discussion.
The nature of the thought process behind how these children present and how we protect them.
I didn't hear anybody say combined.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Just in the same meeting, the only combination is in one meeting.
To have them discuss.
Discuss
It's
it.
discussed in the same.
So we have the leverage of one
Yeah,
against the
I'm
other.
sorry, I caught that. No, we don't want you to make one policy.
Okay, gotcha.
Make sense now?
Yep.
A yeoman's job, Dr. Elliott. Thank you.
Great work.
Well, I just did a quick search on the board docs site to see if anything came up with illegal immigrants. Nothing comes up.
How about undocumented?
Well,
Or
we'll
immigrants, just immigrants.
do that.
Oh, it's a new play thing.
I wouldn't trust that search feature.
Yeah, I-
No matches.
Really? Okay.
Correct.
Doesn't mean it's not there.
Well, this is just searching our policies.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you were doing,
I'm
No,
not.
it's just as
I
title.
thought you were doing theirs. I thought you were doing,
No.
we thought you were doing the board docs from the presentation before.
No, oh, wouldn't that be?
That's what we were talking,
amazing?
that's what, I don't know about Denise, that's what I thought you were doing. I thought you were doing.
No, I knew what she was doing.
No, I know it is.
We didn't know any of the 11 grand yet.
I get
Oh, we had a test article. All right, I think we're wrapping up this meeting. There is no public here. I do appreciate the cooperation of the administration and Dr. Frazier, Dr. Elliott, and Mr. Frederickson. And it's great that we can time box these and get things done in 2 hours is a terrific task. And Matt, you'll give us our list of hits for next one when we see you next. Next week or so, you'll give us a list. Terrific.
Great.
That concludes the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.